What about the feeling of burnout? How do people accomplish their goals if they just feel burned out? Is that also with decision fatigue, feeling burnt out? How do they get back to a place of, clarity and focus so they can really just be their best self in a day-to-day process in becoming their future best self?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why people burn out. One of them might be that they actually, maybe it's decision fatigue, maybe they're still like not really doing what they want to do.
Yeah.
And so they're not really excited about what they're doing. They're not really moving towards their desired future self. They're just expending a lot of energy on things that they don't really value. Like if you're moving towards your desired future self and you're investing in your future self and you're working on projects that you love, like you're being pulled towards your future self. Like pull motivation is a lot more exciting than push motivation. Push motivation is like, I really don't want to do this. Like, let's go to work for 5 hours.
Yeah.
And so a big part of burnout is a recognition that maybe what you're doing isn't taking you towards your future self. And maybe you need to sit back down in your journal and reevaluate your future self. Who do you really want to be? And how do you start making small, simple investments in your future self so that your future self keeps getting bigger and so that you start moving towards that future self? I think another, great way to, avoid burnout is simply just taking time to sit and measure your gains. Like sometimes burnout happens because, you're so busy trying to get somewhere that you forgot that, like, how much progress have you made? Like, let's take a second to, like, be grateful. Let's take a second to, like, evaluate your progress and to appreciate your gains for a minute. Mm-hmm. Appreciate how great your life is. Who not how's another great antidote to burnout, because maybe you're burned out because you're doing a lot of how that you don't want to do. And so maybe you need a who to, like, if you've got 5 things that you do on a regular basis, which 2 of them are sucking all your energy, and how can you just get who's to do that or get rid of them, and you just focus more and more on the 1 or 2 things that bring you energy. And so I think that, connecting with your future self, continually measuring the gain, applying more and more who not how so that you actually are generating results with less effort, but, doing what you want. So, and sometimes you just might need a break. Sometimes, and sometimes you actually need a break from your future self. Sometimes, like, you just
from striving so much.
Yeah, well, or like sometimes you just do need some active recovery. Like I do like the concept of Stephen Kotler on active recovery and flow state, like embedding active recovery in your life. Like maybe you actually do need more play. Maybe you do need, like, active recovery is the idea of what's an outside work activity that gives you flow. What's an outside activity that you enjoy that gives you engagement that is kind of healing and restorative. The gain is very restorative. Like it's like here I am versus where I was before. But what are some flow activities that you can do that bring you joy outside of work? And how can you spend more time doing those? Because it's that, other idea of how you do anything is how you do everything. And so like if you're creating flow outside of work, and there's a lot of research in occupational psychology, there's a concept called psychological detachment from work. We live in a world where our work is always pinging us, dinging us, texts and emails. And so psychological detachment from work means you cut off work mentally, physically, and you fully engage out of work.
And play activities and family activities.
Yeah. And I think you can create a life and an environment where, you're recovering enormously and you're doing activities outside of work that are restorative. They give you flow, and then you can transfer that to having flow in your work. I think one other thing that leads people to burnout, though, is spending a lot of energy and not actually feeling like they're making progress. So, like, I have a lot of energy when I achieve a goal, right? Achieving goals gives you energy. It's exciting. And so if you actually, like, give yourself deadlines, and if you actually, like, create a result and you actually watch yourself succeed and you just build some confidence because you just measured yourself against where you were before you achieved the goal rather than against your ideal, like, you're seeing yourself move forward, and that gives you excitement. Like, success creates confidence. Success creates motivation. And so watching yourself get small wins and watching yourself get big wins gives you energy. Bill Gates said that most people overestimate what they can do in 1 year and they underestimate what they can do in a decade. That same principle, though, can be scaled down. Most people underestimate what they can do in 1 year and they overestimate what they can do in a single day. Most people, they try to do so much in one day, and it leads them to constantly feeling like failures. They've got like 50 things on their to-do list. They're burning themselves out they're overly stimulated. They're not sleeping well, and ultimately that leads to poor performance. If you're not trying to, like, take over the world in one day, and instead you realize, look, if I can get into a consistent pattern, a consistent system, a consistent routine, I can just make powerful progress on a daily basis, then I can stop, recover, let it go, because I'm playing the long game. If you play the long game and are consistent for a long period of time, you're going to have huge compounding effects. And so rather than trying to overestimate what you can do in a single day, get really good at finding that sweet spot. Apply the 80-20 principle. 80% of results come from 20% of what you do. Don't have 50 things on your daily to-do list. Have like 2 or 3 really important things. Important and not urgent. Wake up, get to your important activities, eat the frog, as they would say, put the worst first, and knock those things out. Get yourself like 2 to 4 or 5 hours of really good flow, then just fully recover and allow yourself to enjoy your life. If you try to accomplish too much in one day, then you're probably short-term thinking. If you have a long-term vision and a long-term plan and you're playing the long game, which means you're playing your own game, you've set your own game, you're excited about that game, then you can really get deep into the process. Then you can get deep into doing what you want to do and stop trying to prove yourself to others. Stop trying to get to the next level. You can play your own game right now. So here's the basics of how to do it. Jim Collins, the author of Good to Great, said that if you have more than 3 priorities, you have none. First off, you set the long-term vision. What is the game you're actually playing? And then from there, you just get into a rhythm of finding the sweet spot of how much you can do in a single day. And then once you're done, just let it go. Be done. Psychologically detached from work. There's a lot of research on this. You want to psychologically detach from work, meaning you're comfortable walking away. Even the author Ernest Hemingway would walk away mid-sentence. He didn't need to finish that sentence. He would write for a period of time, and then he would end midway through a sentence so that he left himself a space to start tomorrow. Tomorrow, he could come, and he's already halfway through the sentence, so he can make it an easy, quick win and get momentum for tomorrow. Give yourself permission to celebrate and to walk away. You've done the 2 to 4 or 5 flow-based, focused hours. You've knocked out the 2 to 3 things that really matter today. Now go, recover, enjoy your life so that you're in the joy of the process, in the joy of your long game. You're here. You're not trying to be there. You're just enjoying where you're at. You know you're playing the game. If you have a long-term game, there's no competition against you because you're not trying to force it. That doesn't mean you're not making aggressive action. It doesn't mean you're not taking bold leaps towards your future self. It doesn't mean you're not being courageous. But if you're trying too hard to take over the world today, what that means is that you don't actually have a long-term vision. You can have a long-term vision. You can be hyper-aggressive. You can be courageous. You can make power moves today. But you can also live to fight another day. You can walk away and say, I know that if I have 5 really good days this week, that's better than having 1 insane day and then 4 days of being busted and broken. If you're trying too hard to knock out too much in the short term, that may probably lead you to really unhealthy mechanisms for doing that, whether that be like drugs or who knows what you'll do to try to create some fast result. But if you're playing the long game and if you're playing your own game and if you're no longer competing with other people, if you're what psychologists would call self-determined, and if you're intrinsically motivated, meaning you love your path, you know that your future self is bigger than you. You're actively preparing and creating your future self, but you're also really happy with where you're at. You're enjoying the process. You're failing forward and measuring backward, as some people would say. Then you can rock today out. You can be in flow. You can make meaningful progress towards your future self. And then you can be satisfied. You can walk away and you can say, tomorrow is going to be amazing as well. And then you can get consistent at creating very powerful, very important progress on a daily basis. 2 to 3 key outcomes. It could be if you're a writer, writing for 2 to 4 hours on that book in complete flow, no distractions, and then you walk away. Or you send a few key emails to potential collaborators. You do a few things. You measure your progress backwards, meaning you're reflecting on the progress you've made and you're enjoying and appreciating that progress. And then you set the big 3 for the next day. And then consistently over time, you're making the right moves. You're allowing yourself to recover. You're feeling joy in the process. You're running your own long-term race, which you're super excited about. You're not worried about anyone else. You're not trying to prove yourself to anyone else. You know that if you stick with this, and obviously you'll improve and you'll adapt your process along the way, but because you're playing such a long game and because you're doing it consistently rather than all crazy, you know how the compound effect works. You know that in the next few years, you're going to be skyrocketing exponentially. That's exactly what Kobe Bryant said, by the way. Kobe Bryant, in an interview with Lewis Howes, talked, and this was probably a year before he passed away, he talked about how his first year playing basketball, he was like 11 years old, he was horrible. He didn't make a single shot. But his dad told him that Kobe, whether you score 0 points or 60, I'm still going to love you. And then Kobe, what he realized from that is that he had the security to fail. He had the security to try, and that his dad would still love him. And that's when he started to take the long-term game. He started to really say, okay, I'm committed to this for the long haul. I don't need to try to prove myself to my dad. I don't need to try to get quick victories because I'm inadequate or insecure. I'm going to choose the game I want to play, and I'm going to master that game. And so once he felt secure in himself, he then set a long-term game. And when you have a long-term game, then you can really commit to a pure process. Then you can commit to actually getting really good at the fundamentals. You can get good at making the right progress rather than trying to force things. It's that whole difference between power versus force. If you've got the long game, if you're playing your own game, then you're no longer competing with anyone else. Then you're no longer trying to prove yourself to anyone else. Then you can enjoy where you're at. You can also make the furthest progress. You can be courageous. You can try to boldly attempt things, and you're fine failing yourself forward and then measuring yourself backwards against where you were before to see your own progress. So that's the challenge, is play the long game and then on a daily basis make massive meaningful progress in a sustainable way, which then the compound effect over time takes over. If you're trying too hard to accomplish so much in a short period of time, I've got to ask you why. What is your motivation for that? Is it because you're insecure in yourself? Is it because you're trying to prove yourself? Is it because you don't really like yourself? If you're trying so hard to get to the next stage of your life, rather than really deciding what this one's all about, what's that for? If you're always trying to get to next, then you're never going to actually be anywhere. You're never going to be here, and it doesn't matter what that next milestone is, you're never going to actually be there. You're always going to be wanting the next thing, trying to prove yourself, and really what that proves is that there's a gaping hole inside of you, and a hole of knowing yourself, of deciding for yourself what success means to you, of running your own race, of enjoying your life, of focusing on what matters most. Set the long-term vision, get into a rhythm and a routine of being in flow, of putting the important before the urgent, of having 1, 2, or 3 major important things that you're trying to accomplish on a daily basis. Give yourself 2, 4, 5, even 6, 7 hours of flow, whatever you want. Research shows that the most productive countries in the world actually usually work less. They're usually working 4 to 6 hours a day, but that's focused, flow-based, important, intelligent work. It's not the busyness of just reactively responding to things or being distracted 90% of the time like most people. It's no. You sat down, you were in flow, you focused, you knocked out the things you planned to do, and then you were happy and you were comfortable and you walked away. And you went and recovered and you enjoyed your life. And then you lived to fight another day. You're going to come back and you're going to be there again. That's what Steven Pressfield would call a pro. Someone who's playing the long game. Someone who comes to work every day and they just crush it. They just do their job and they leave. They don't need to take over the world in one day. They're playing the long game and they know that they can get somewhere very far over the long term. That doesn't mean you're not making hyper-aggressive growth within the umbrella of your long-term vision. But that long-term vision removes the unnecessary anxiety. It also removes you having to prove yourself to anyone else. It also allows you to lay the better track and to love the process and to get deep into the right process, which is to do what you really need to do to become a master of your craft, mastery orientation, rather than overly obsessing on externals and proving yourself to others. So don't try to accomplish too much in one day. Know that you can accomplish way more than you think in a year if you're consistent and if you're applying the compound effect. And if you're having consistent days, weeks, months where you're in flow, focused on the right things, knocking out the right things, and then fully recovering, then you're never burning out. You're loving your life. You're never burning out. You're in flow. You're in joy. You're happy with where you're at, yet you know your future self keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Every day is an investment in your future self. You don't need to burn it all down today. There's a great quote that says that perfection is not when there's nothing left to add, but when there's nothing left to take away. Perfection is about simplicity, and simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. So in this video, I'm going to talk about how to have a simple but powerfully effective and stress-free week, day, month, etc. The easiest thing to do when you're looking at your month or even your year, but let's just stick with month and week, is to strip it down to what are the few things, and make a list of this, seriously, because there's a lot of things probably on your calendar. a lot of things coming at you that may be outside of what is absolutely essential. So the best place to start your week or your month is to strip everything away and just ask yourself literally, if nothing else got done, what are the few things that absolutely must get done? Because chances are in your schedule, there's lots of meetings, there's lots of activity, there's lots of stress, there's lots of pressure. And if you were to just remove all that, because a lot of that's just noise, a lot of that, your life would move on if those things didn't get done. Strip it all down to nothing and ask yourself at the beginning of the month, the beginning of the week, what must get done? What are the 1, 2, or 3 things that absolutely have to get done? And start there. That is how you have the most effective week ever. And that's how you have a stress-free week, is you strip it down to nothing. And you actually just say, what actually has to get done this week? It actually allows you to realize it's very doable. You can be extremely effective. I actually love the quote from Derek Sivers that there's a big difference between being productive and being busy. Being productive and being effective is about doing the right things. Being efficient is about doing things right. But you don't want to be efficient until you've been effective. And being effective means you've actually determined the few things which truly matter. I love the quote from, I think it's John, it's Maxwell, but also it's quoted in Essentialism by Greg McKeown. And he basically says, you cannot overestimate the unimportance of practically everything. Almost everything is unimportant. Almost everything is non-essential. And chances are living, if you think about the 80% rule, 80% of your results comes from 20% of what you're doing. The 20% of what you're doing that really matters is the things that you strip down and you say, these are the few things that absolutely must get done this week or absolutely must get done this month. Nothing else really matters. Nothing else really needs to get done. It's just stuff you're maintaining out of fear. It's stuff you're maintaining out of habit, out of convenience. If you want to go 10x in your life, you have to strip away 80% of your current self, 80% of your current activity, 80% of your current relationships, 80% of your current business model. 80% of your current self will not scale up to 10x. Only the critical 20%, the 20% of things that will go up and match your future self. And so just to keep it really simple, if you want to have effective weeks, effective months, it's not about doing a lot. It's not about being busy. It's about being productive. It's about being stress-free as well. It's about reducing stress and pressure. And the easiest way to do that is to take away all of the stuff that doesn't really matter. Perfection is not when there's nothing more to add, but nothing left to take away. What I have found when I look at this month, for example, I'm filming this in March of 2022, and I literally just made a list of what are the things that absolutely must get done, if nothing else, this month, especially just speaking of my work, because I'm in the middle of writing a book. So I definitely need to write like 30 or 40,000 words of my book. That's a lot. That's actually most of the book. But if I was to actually be honest, what else do I absolutely need to do? I need to film like 3 or 4 videos for one of the programs I run, and I need to do like 2 or 3 coaching calls, or probably 3 more coaching calls. That's bare minimum. That's absolute requirement. Those are things I must do. Everything else on top of that is noise. It's cherries on top. It's frosting. But what is the cake? What are the things that must get done, that are important, and maybe even a few that are slightly urgent, a few that absolutely I can't get out of? When I actually look at the list, it's write a bunch of my book, make a few videos for one of my programs, and do a few coaching calls. But when I actually think about the month in advance, I think, holy cow, there's hundreds of things I feel like I need to do. And that stress, that pressure, that noise, it creates paralysis by analysis, and it stops you from actually focusing on the few things that absolutely are critical to getting done. And so this is similar, by the way, to Warren Buffett's concept of living a good life. What Warren Buffett invites you to do is he invites you to make a list of like 25 things that you want to do with your life, and then rank order them from top to bottom and eliminate the bottom 20 so that there's only 5 items on the list, and start there. Because the bottom 20 will either happen in their time, or they're not going to happen. They're just not that important. If you strip your list down to what absolutely is critical and what absolutely must get done, then what I would invite you to do, if you're serious about not only being effective, but being happy, is eliminate as much of those other things that are on your calendar or on your to-do list as possible. Just actually get the critical few done, the critical, most important things done. And then if you would, do what psychologists call psychological detachment from work. Actually take free time, spend time away from work and go have some peak experiences, or what Stephen Kotler would call high flow activities. A high flow activity is a playful, enjoyable outside work activity that creates flow and happiness in your life. And there's a great quote that basically says, how you do anything is how you do everything. And so when you create high flow outside of work in terms of peak experiences, play, fun, connection, recovery, that actually is fuel for your work. The more flow you have outside your work, the easier it is to get flow inside your work, or engagement. The less flow you have outside of work, the less flow you'll have in work. So it'd be good to keep your phone on airplane mode for large portions of time and actually be present. Maybe engage in some form of hobby, learn the piano, learn a new language, go travel. One other thing you really want to do, fill your mind with new knowledge. If you want to go 10x, then 80% of your future self is new and different compared to your current level of knowledge and perspective. And so the more you actually learn and embrace learning, reading really good books, getting new perspectives, those things will transform your perspective. They'll transform your goals. They'll transform your life. Just back to the actual crux of this video. If you want to have effective weeks and months, it's not about having a big list of 20 items to do. It's about stripping that list down to what are the actual things that must get done. There's a lot of things that might get done. There's a lot of things that I might let on my calendar. But what are the few things that absolutely are critical, essential, that have to get done? That list is probably a lot shorter than you think. And you could probably nail that list if you were effective in the first, if we're talking about like in a month period of time, you could probably nail most of that list in the first week. And then you actually invest the time in getting those important things done. And if you're bold, if you're committed to your future self, remove a lot of that stuff that doesn't need to be there. Start actually getting the critical few things done week by week, month by month. And you will, not only will you feel more confident because you're actually getting first things first done and you're actually doing what you need to do rather than being overwhelmed and stressed out by 1,000 things that really don't matter. You're living the 80-20 principle. You're actually focusing on the 20% that matter. You're actually getting them done. You're actually prioritizing your future self. And then you're eliminating more and more of that stuff that doesn't matter and making space. You create space for freshness, for newness, for novelty, for learning, for flow, for recovery, for transforming yourself. Abraham Maslow said that peak experiences are basically required to becoming self-actualized. Also owning that time comes from you, not the opposite. Once you own your freedom of time, once you own your future self, once you own that time comes from you, it's not outside of you, then you can do whatever you want with your life. You've got to do what Brian Tracy would call eat that frog. First thing in the morning, get yourself into the right frame of mind, meditate, visualize, pray, connect with your higher power, connect with your future self, and then ultimately take action. Take 60 to 90 minutes of action in a flow state before you've plugged your brain into all the technology, before you've plugged into all the notifications, before you've sped your brain up and gotten yourself totally distracted by the day. Instead, you wake up first thing in the morning before there's busyness and you've given yourself 1 to 2 hours of space where you can meditate, visualize, and ultimately take action on your dreams. Again, that's called eat that frog. Eating the frog is doing the most important thing first, doing the worst first, doing that thing that's important but not urgent, doing that thing that if you do it, it will move your life forward. So who is your future self? What are your dreams? What is it you actually want to accomplish? Are you actually waking up and giving yourself space first thing in the morning to first off meditate, pray, visualize your future self? There's a lot of research that shows that very few people visualize their future self. But what would happen if rather than at the end of the day, when your willpower is most depleted, when you're fried, when most people at the end of the day are fried because their willpower is all gone, what do? You consume junk food, you consume junk media, you do a bunch of things to create immediate dopamine or immediate gratification because you're not thinking long term. When your willpower is low, you don't think long term, and so you make short-term poor decisions. And most people at the end of the day, because they're fried, they just consume a bunch of junk, which ultimately hurts their sleep, it hurts their momentum the next morning. So what would happen if you, instead of consuming a bunch of junk, unplugged fully? There's actually a lot of research on this. It's called psychological detachment, or even psychological detachment from work. But what would happen if you fully unplugged at the end of the day and just recovered? What would happen if you left your cell phone away from your body for longer periods of time so you could actually engage with the ones you loved and actually go through a true state of recovery? The human brain needs recovery, and it's actually while you're recovering that your best ideas will come. Your best experiences will happen. Research shows that only 16% of creative breakthroughs and creative ideas happen while you're focused at work. Instead, most of your best ideas, most of your biggest ahas are going to happen while you're recovering, when you're on vacation, when you're in the shower, when you're hanging out with loved ones, when you're driving. And so what if at the end of the day, or at the end of your work, you fully unplugged? You left your cell phone away from your body, and you fully connected with your loved ones. You actually decompressed. You engaged in life. And then you went through a routine of actually shutting yourself down, going to bed maybe an hour earlier, rather than consuming a bunch of junk, rather than being disconnected from your loved ones. You actually created a routine for going to bed earlier and then planning the one thing that you want to do the next morning. There's one thing that you really only need to accomplish the next morning. Far too many people have a to-do list of 10 or 15 items. The 80-20 principle shows that 80% of the things you do produce 20% of your results. So what if you removed 8 or 9 of those things on your to-do list and you did the one thing that you knew mattered more than anything towards your bigger picture dreams? What's the one thing that if you did it would help you become your future self? What's the one thing that if you did it would make your whole life different? What's that most important thing? What's the frog that you're avoiding? What's that worst first? What would happen if you went to bed a little bit earlier and rather than staring at your cell phone in bed, you actually just mapped your next morning? Research from BJ Fogg, who's a Stanford psychologist, he's one of the leading experts on habit design, said that the easiest way to do a habit is to make it easy. You want to make it the simplest thing. So if you want to floss your teeth in the morning, all you have to do is take the floss out and put it on your counter so that it's so easy as all you have to do is pick it up. That's how you set yourself up. If you want to go running in the morning, all you have to do is get your running clothes, set them right next to the door so that you don't have to do a ton of things in the morning. You want to wake up in the morning and have it all laid out, and you want to know immediately what you want to do. You want to know exactly what you want to do, that first thing when you first wake up. You want the environment set up, but you also want to know in your mind what you're going to do so that you don't have to make a decision when you first wake up. So what would happen if you went to bed a little earlier and without being so plugged into your technology? What if you had actually recovered from work, actually been engaged in your life, and you went to bed with a purpose? You went to bed knowing first thing in the morning what you would do, and you would set up the environment so that when you woke up, the decision was already made. You didn't have to burn out decision fatigue. You didn't have to burn out willpower. You didn't have to lay in bed with the alarm going off and wonder what you're going to do. Instead, you heard the alarm, you woke up, and you were excited to wake up because the environment was already set up, and you already knew the first action you were going to take. And you already knew the core outcome that you were going to try to make. You knew that you were going to eat that frog. You were going to put the important over the urgent, and you were going to, rather than plugging your brain into technology, you were going to keep your brain waves moving slow. Your brain waves move slow first thing in the morning, which means that you're most creative, you've got the most ability to visualize, you've got the most ability to create and take action. But most people, they wake up and immediately plug themselves back into their technology, which speeds their brain up to what's called the beta state, and therefore their brains are already going in too many different directions. And so as a result, they can't connect with their subconscious, they can't connect to their future self, they can't take bold action, and then they just get caught up in the urgency of the day, and then they go on a repeat cycle where day after day, month after month, year after year, they're not taking action on what's most important, and so they're not living their dreams. But if you give yourself some space, if you wake up early, you know what you're going to do, and you're focused on one core outcome. What's the one key thing? When I was a graduate student, I was getting my PhD, I really wanted to become a professional writer. And the one core outcome that I went for every morning before my 8 o'clock class was to wake up, meditate, visualize my future self, and then that one core outcome was just to write articles. And I wrote articles several mornings before going to my classes. And so by the time I went into my 8 a.m. class, my fellow graduate students were just pulling themselves out of bed, drinking their morning coffee, trying to wake themselves up. And I had already meditated, visualized, exercised, and most importantly, done my most important task, which was writing an article. And it was through doing that over a few years, while still a graduate student, my blogs were read over 100 million times. I became a professional writer. I was making more money than all of my professors combined by the time I left, because I put the worst first. I put the most important thing first. So who is your future self? And what's the most important thing you can do? What's that most important action that if you woke up and took that action first thing in the morning in a nicely visualized state, you visualized your future self, you prayed, you meditated, you got yourself into that right frame of mind. You didn't plug into technology, your brain was still moving slow. And you then focused in a flow state for 60 to 90 minutes on what's most important before the urgency of the day, before everything happened. How would that impact your relationship with your kids if you're a parent? What would happen if when you first encountered your kids, you weren't reactive to them because you were still waking up? But what if you had already visualized your future self? You'd already prayed, you'd already gotten yourself into the right frame of mind, and you'd already put in what's most important to you towards your biggest dreams first. How would that change how you interact with your kids? You would then be a lot more powerful, a lot more confident. You'd be a lot more discerning. You could actually be present with them because you would put first things first. You've got to put first things first in your life, or else everything else is going to happen to you and you're going to be reactive to the situation. That is the key to morning routines, is knowing the one thing that's most important that you're going to do and getting that done consistently. If you woke up every morning with a purpose, and if you actually got that thing done, took 60 to 90 minutes of focused flow on that thing. If you're a writer, it's writing. If you're making videos, it's videos. If you're a scientist, it's doing science. Whatever it is, what's that important thing that's actually going to move you towards your future self? You have to know who your future self is. There's a lot of research on this. In the field of performance psychology, we call it deliberate practice. Deliberate practice is engaging in a process that helps you develop skills, abilities, expertise. And you can't engage in deliberate practice on a regular basis if you don't know who you want to be. So if you want to be someone, if you want to get somewhere, the first thing you do in the morning is got to be taking action towards that thing. That first morning, first off, your brain's moving slow. Second off, if you're taking powerful action, repetition over time changes you at a subconscious level. So if you're taking action first thing on those things, over time what's going to happen is you're going to no longer be able to justify the things you used to justify. You're going to spend your time on more and more valuable things, and you're going to start saying no to the distractions that are taking your time, the relationships that are taking your time, even the job that might be taking your time. You're going to say, I'm worth more than this. My future self is worth more than this. And then you'll increase your commitment towards what you want. Because as you engage in those future self behaviors, you're going to get very committed to who you want to be. And your whole day starts to shift if by 8 a.m. you've already taken more action towards your dreams and goals than most people take in a month or a year. And if that becomes your consistent morning routine, then over time you've got so much confidence, so much momentum that results just start coming at you. Life becomes really easy to succeed when you put the worst first, or when you put the most important first, when you begin with the end in mind, which is your future self, as Stephen Covey would say, and then as you take action consistently towards your future self, all of a sudden you become your future self. You become the person you want to be. You begin creating the circumstances you want. Most people, when they wake up, they're operating from their current circumstances. They wake up, they react to their notifications, they then go on with what's busy and what's urgent. They're living from their current circumstances, and they're also living from their former identity. They're living out the habits of their former self. But if you wake up and visualize your future self, and if you visualize your future circumstances, and if you're taking action based on the circumstances you want for your future, then you're operating from who you want to be. And there's a lot of research that shows when you're operating from your future self, and when you're actually visualizing that and feeling the emotions of that, and then acting towards that then you change your brain in the present so that it looks like your future self's brain. And you start to anticipate and expect success. So that's my invitation to you, is go to bed a little bit earlier. Don't plug into all of the dopamine seeking because your willpower's gone at night. Don't consume so much junk as far as media or food. Be plugged into where you are. Wherever you are, that's where you should be. Actually engage with your loved ones. Keep your cell phone away from your body as much as you can. And then recover and go to bed with a purpose. Wake up, eat that frog. Visualize your future self so that by 7 or 8 in the morning, you've already lived your dreams. Then you have so much confidence in your day. Then you change what you tolerate. Then you change what you're willing to engage in. Then you start saying no and no and no to more and more things. And you start making true commitments and decisions toward your dreams. That's how you build confidence. That's how you build momentum. That's how you live your dreams. That's how you start owning your time. And that's how you stop engaging in things that no longer matter to you. That's how you upgrade your standards. That's how you live dreams fast. That's how you can make millions of dollars. That's how you can create an amazing life. So what you do before 8 a.m. makes or breaks your life. Who's the person you want to be? Who's the person that is your future self? And what are the actions they would take? What are the things that your future self would say no to that you're still saying yes to? What are the distractions, the addictions that you're still saying yes to that your future self said no to a long time ago? What are the actions that you need to take? What is the one thing that if you did and got really good at, or took action on, or completed, would help you become your future self? Gratitude is one of the most powerful ways to take any negative experience, any trauma, and turn it into growth, or what psychologists would call post-traumatic growth. So basically what you do is you look at an event, you look at any hard experience, and rather than just avoiding it, you don't want to avoid it. Psychologists say you either have approach motivation or an avoid motivation. If you have an avoid motivation, then what you're doing is you're avoiding thinking about it, avoiding worrying about it. And then that's going to hit you. You're going to get triggered and it's going to knock you off your socks. Actually, they call that invasive rumination, where you're just going about your day and then all of a sudden, boom, you get hit by thoughts or feelings about some negative experience from your past and you can't get rid of it. And if you don't turn that invasive rumination, which means it's something that hit you, if you don't turn that into what they call deliberate rumination, where you actually sit and focus on the trauma, focus on what it means, and then ultimately what you want to do is you want to twist it. You want to turn it's trauma because you have dysfunctional beliefs about it. You've got negative beliefs about it. You've got beliefs that are ultimately not helpful. That's why it's trauma. It's because how you framed it. You framed it in a meaningful way that means it's stopping you. Trauma means you have a dysfunctional belief about something in your past. I know that may sound rough because we do go through hard things and we go through things that may be fair or unfair. Trauma isn't about fairness or unfairness. It's about framing. It's about the meaning you gave to your experience. And so basically, put simply, this is what the research shows. If you want to turn a negative experience into post-traumatic growth, and post-traumatic growth means you have a clear sense of meaning, purpose, strength. Basically, you view the past in a purposeful manner. And if you add gratitude to that, you're actually grateful it happened because it's given you a greater sense of meaning and purpose. So you look at the past from a purposeful perspective. You can look at a negative event and you can say, that event had purpose in my life. I can use that experience to either help other people or to do things I couldn't have done before. I love the quote from Rahm Emanuel. He said, never let a serious crisis go to waste. It's an opportunity to do things you could never have done before. So crises, challenges will happen all the time. But if you look at it with purpose, if you're grateful for it, then you can use it to be better in the future. One of my good friends, Richie Norton, he's been through an insane amount of tragedy in his life. They've had one of their children die. His wife had a stroke. One of his kids got hit by a car. They lost their 3 foster kids. Every time Richie goes through something painful, he asks himself 2 questions. How can I use this to be better, not bitter? So how can I use this to be better, not bitter? If you're still bitter, then you're not dealing with it. You've still got dysfunctional beliefs about it. You're still framing it in a negative. You're still the victim. And so how can I use this to be better? And then how can I use this to help other people? Those are the 2 questions that Richie asks himself. So here's what you want to do. And there's a lot of research. I've got links down below to articles, but you're going to have invasive rumination, which means you're going to think about the trauma. It's going to hit you. But what you want to turn that into is you want to turn that into deliberate rumination. You want to sit, focus on, and think about the event. You want to think about it with your journal. You want to write about it. There's a lot of research that shows that writing about traumatic events just for a period of time actually enhances your health. Writing about your goals does the same thing, by the way. Writing about your traumas and writing about your health over time improves your physical health dramatically over time. So you want to sit and write about the event and write about what it means to you. Write about what you can do because of it now. Write about how your life can be better. I love the quote, life happens for you, not to you. If you ask yourself the question and you want to be proactive, how can I use this to be better rather than bitter? How can I use this to do things differently than I could not do before? What is the value or meaning or purpose of this? Sitting there and thinking about it and ultimately creating a positive meaning. Gratitude really helps. Down below, there's a research article that shows deliberate rumination means you're deliberately focusing on the event, what it means, how it shapes your life, how you're going to be different as a result, how you can be better as a result. And then gratitude means that you're actually injecting gratitude into it. You're thankful for it. You're looking for resources you can use. You're looking for how that event has strengthened you or how it could make you better or how you can do things differently than you could before or how you now know things that your former self didn't know. When you go through hard experiences, it certainly hurts. But if you use it to create post-traumatic growth, meaning you actually get value out of the experience and you can be better because of it, you've got more of a sense of meaning and purpose in your life. You've clarified your values. A lot of times you going through those experiences can be one of the best things that could happen to you. Even something as small as losing your job. I know that might not seem like a trauma, but it could be a trauma in the short term if it negatively impacts you. But if you frame it in a positive way, you can use that to ultimately be a catalyst to do things you never thought you'd do before. Or sometimes really negative experiences happen that really change how you see the world. Richie Norton being one. When his child died, he became very urgent about life. He realized he was wasting his time on a lot of things, and so he started living his life at a lot higher level because he felt so much pain. Often you go through a lot of pain and that can translate into purpose. It can translate into meaning. It can translate into calling. Only though if you use it to be better, not bitter, only if you use it and look at the value of your experiences, and only if you choose to be grateful for what you had rather than bitter. Gratitude is one of the most powerful things you can do. If you write about the hardest things in your life, and if you choose to be grateful for those experiences, you say, this happened for me, not to me. I'm going to be better, not bitter. and I can use this now to give myself greater resources to pursue a better, more meaningful life than my former self had. The person you were before you had that traumatic experience didn't have the knowledge or the capability or the meaning in their life that you now have. So you are much further along than your former self was if you choose to focus on it, learn about it, proactively choose the meaning of it. One of the things that Richie told me is you shouldn't just look for the meaning. If you're looking for the meaning, that's going to lead you down a really negative spiral. Just as an example, if you have something traumatic that happens, you have a child that passes away. And by the way, trigger alerts big time. I know that a lot of people have been through a lot of hard experiences. I've been through a lot of experiences. But Richie said, I had to stop looking for the meaning, because if he was looking for a meaning, that ultimately led him to comparison, social comparison, where he was comparing his situation to others, and maybe other people, their child didn't die or something like that. So Richie, instead of looking for a meaning, he chose his own meaning. He focused on the experience. He chose the meaning of it. He chose who he would be as a result of that, and he chose to be grateful. He chose to be a better person as a result. He chose to have a better marriage as a result. He chose to have greater meaning in his life. He chose to become a better person as a result. He has an amazing life. Him and his wife live an absolutely amazing life. They live life on their own terms. They would fit what psychologists call self-determination theory. They choose where they live, where they work, how they spend their time, but they really clarified those values and their commitment to those values because of some of the tragedies they've been through. So they are a lot better, not bitter. They're also grateful, they're humble, and they just live better lives, and they're insanely grateful. So gratitude is one of the most powerful ways to transform your trauma. You can actually know that you've overcome or healed a trauma because you're grateful for what happened and you've turned it into growth. You've turned it into more resources that you can use to help yourself and other people. You've turned it into enhanced meaning in life, purpose, resilience, strength. And you do that by, once you get hit by invasive rumination, means once you get hit by a thought or a feeling about it, rather than avoiding it and not dealing with it, you go into approach mode, approach orientation. You proactively, deliberately ruminate on it. You actually write about it in your journal. You think about it, you talk about it with other people. There's a great quote from Peter Levine. He said, trauma isn't what happens to you, it's what you hold on the inside in the absence of an empathetic witness. Sometimes you need to be your own empathetic witness. Sometimes your journal can be your empathetic witness. It can be where you write about what you feel. You can write about how it felt, but also then you can proactively choose the meaning, as Richie does. You can choose to make it mean whatever you want it to mean. You can choose to frame it as a positive. You can choose to be grateful for everything involved. You can choose to turn it into what Dan would call a gain rather than being in the gap. If you choose to be grateful for it and choose to frame the meaning, then you own your past. If you don't, then your past owns you. And you get to choose the meaning of your past. You get to choose the framing of your past. Your past is a story, but whatever story you tell, that's what shapes your identity. And that's ultimately what happens with trauma, is if it's unresolved, then you've now got a crippled identity because of it. You're crippled because of something that happened in your past. Whereas if you own your past, if you own the story, if you frame the meaning yourself, then you can be empowered because of it. It's all a meaning, it's all a story. Your past is a fiction. It's what you decide to give meaning to. There's a great quote on this by George Orwell, which he wrote about in 1984. He says, whoever owns the past owns the future, but whoever owns the present owns the past. And this is one of the coolest findings in psychology, is that whatever view you have in the present, that's what shapes how you view your past. So if you're grateful in the present, if you're proactive in the present, if you take ownership over your meanings, then you can choose how you frame the past. And if you choose to frame your past with gratitude, with meaning, and with proactivity, then you can have post-traumatic growth, which means you can take ownership of your own future. If you don't, then you're going to get hit by that invasive rumination. Means if you don't deal with it, then it's going to create post-traumatic stress, where you're not dealing with it and you just are trying to get through life, trying to avoid it, and every once in a while it just triggers you and it destroys you because you're not dealing with it. Write about it, create the meaning for yourself, figure out how you can use this as resources to become better, use it as purpose and meaning in your life, and choose to be grateful for it. Frame it as gratitude. You can frame anything as a gratitude. Gratitude is the mother of all virtues. Gratitude will change your life. Gratitude can transform your traumas. Gratitude can make a bad day into a good day. Gratitude can make a tragedy into a triumph. Gratitude is the most powerful force. They say that gratitude is the mother of all virtues because gratitude is the gateway to all virtues. If you want to be more courageous, you start by being more grateful. If you want to be more confident, start by being more grateful. If you want to be more humble, start by being more grateful. Gratitude is the path to transforming everything. So just to give a little bit of background, flow is the psychological state of mind where you're fully absorbed in what you're doing. You're completely absorbed. You're fully engaged. You're 100% there. Time slows down. It's where full joy is. Actually, a lot of people think that flow is the purpose of life. When you're in a flow state, you're at pure performance. You actually don't even have to think about it. Like, for example, if you're playing, like, I'm thinking about ping pong. Once you get into a flow state, you don't have to like calculate every thought. You just are in total flow. And flow is where you have to be in high performance. It's where you be to, if you're a writer, to get into stream of consciousness. It's how you can just fully engage in what you're doing. Flow is what you should strive for. And there's one thing that you need to do to actually be in flow more often. And that is that you focus on just one outcome at a time. One outcome at a time. So in philosophy, there's a concept called teleology. And basically what teleology means is that every human action is to create an outcome. Every behavior. Right now, I'm behaving to create an outcome. That's to finish this video. Hopefully your outcome is to finish this video or whatever it is. The problem with most people is that they're trying to create too many outcomes at once. And so a first question you should have is, what's the outcome I'm actually trying to create right now? So for example, if you're at work, what's the outcome you're actually trying to create? And then focus on creating that outcome. If you can focus on creating that single outcome, you'll stay in flow. The moment you try to create 2 or more outcomes at a single time, you will be pulled in multiple different directions. And as a result, you won't be fully absorbed in what you're doing. So there's a lot of practicality in this. So let me give another example. Let's just say you're at home with your family. What's the one outcome you're trying to produce? It probably should be being fully engaged with and connecting with your family. But then what happens? A notification goes off, and the second you open that notification, you're trying to create another outcome. That outcome is to see what the notification is. That's behavior being driven by an outcome. And so every behavior is to create an outcome. And the more conscious you become, and also the more you want to get into a flow, the more you actually are just seeking to do one outcome at a time. So there's also a lot of research on flow as it relates to recovery. So there's a concept in psychology called psychological detachment from work. And what it means is that you will have a hard time fully engaging and getting absorbed in work if you don't fully disengage and fully recover regularly. And so what it means to disengage is to like literally not just stop working, but to completely remove it from your mind. You have to actually completely unplug and let go of it so that when you plug back in, you can fully engage. A lot of research on psychological detachment from work. And so when you stop working and you recover and you're home, one way that you want to set yourself up is you want to design your environment so that it's easy to be in flow. And one of the things you would do is you would leave notifications away. Maybe keep your computer at the office, keep your work phone in your car. Make it easy to be in flow and not get pings and dings. If you're getting notifications regularly, you're not going to be in flow. Your phone should at least be on silent and probably in another room if you're going to want to be present and engaged with your loved ones. So that's the key to being in flow. Very easy. Accomplish one outcome at a time. When you wake up in the morning, what's the one outcome that if you accomplish will actually create more results than anything else? This is also living the 80-20 principle, because the 80-20 principle says that 80% of your results come from 20% of what you do. And so you got to ask yourself, what are the few things that I do that create the biggest outcome? There's also a book by Brian Tracy, which I highly recommend. It's called Eat the Frog. And one of the things that he got that quote from Mark Twain. Mark Twain basically said, if you eat a frog first thing in the morning, it will be the hardest thing you'll do. And then everything else will be easy after that. The idea of Eat the Frog is, what's the thing that you do first thing in the morning that's the most important thing you could do? And if you accomplish that, you've clearly done the most important thing, and everything else on top of that's just cherry. If you can wake up and know what that frog is, what's the most important thing, that one thing that creates 80% or more of your results, and you focus on that. And if you can live in a flow state where every morning you're getting about 60 to 90 minutes of flow focused on that frog, this is what Stephen Covey would call the important. You focus on the important before the urgent. Most people, when they wake up, they're only focused on urgent things. What if you woke up and focused on something that was important? You ate that frog, and you spent 60 to 90 minutes in flow just getting one outcome. You're not going to be in flow if you've got 10 to-do lists on your day. You actually want 1 to 2 max. What's the 1 to 2 things that you would do that would create 80% of your results, and then delete the other 8 off your to-do list? If you've got 10 things on your to-do list, you're not going to get much flow because you're trying to create 10 outcomes. What's the one thing that if you did, the one outcome, it would change everything? And then when you're home, what's the one outcome that you're actually trying to create? And then design your life so that you can actually recover and not get notifications that pull you from flow and from the most important people in your life. That is how you create a lot of flow. Create one outcome at a time. And also from an eat the frog perspective, finish that thing. Like for me, for example, only one outcome, finish this video, but you got to finish it. So what's the thing that you need to finish tomorrow morning so that you can have more flow? And then recover and go home and remove the obstacles from your environment. Be in flow at work, be at flow at home. The more you get better at this, the more flow you'll have. I'm Dr. Benjamin Hardy. Subscribe, have an amazing day, get in flow, create only one outcome at a time, and remove any obstacles that are gonna pull you from that one outcome. In the book, The Road Less Stupid, the author Keith Cunningham talks about the importance of having thinking time. Literally giving yourself time to just think, just reflect, just meditate. How often do you do that? How often do you give yourself literally 2 to 3 hours where you have no inputs coming in? You just can think. You can actually meditate. There's a lot of research, obviously, on the idea of journaling in the morning, waking up and journaling for 10, 15 minutes. That's a really beautiful space to think. And usually first thing in the morning, especially if you don't put any inputs in, if you don't open your phone, look at social media, look at your email, because the more things you put in your head, the faster you turn your brain on, and then you're sending your brain in multiple directions. So obviously there's a lot of research on wake up first thing in the morning, without input, just go ahead and get yourself into the right environment, get yourself hydrated, and then journal for 10 to 15 minutes. That's powerful micro thinking time. And you can get a lot of creative bursts. You can get a lot of what Josh Waitzkin would call subconscious breakthroughs. Your subconscious is always working even when you're asleep. And so in the morning, when you give yourself that thinking time, you can get extreme clarity. You could even get inspiration because it's a very meditative time in the morning. And especially if you're in a flow state and your brain's not going 1,000 different directions, but you're just keeping your brain in that slow alpha state, you're writing. But how often do you give yourself a 2 to 3 hour session of just meditative thinking time? Recently, and I'll link down below, but there was this soft binaural beats, slow piano music that I had playing recently. And I just let it play deep in my environment. I laid on the couch right behind me. I was staring out that window. I had my journal next to me on the table right there. And I just laid there for literally 3 hours, listening to the beats and just letting myself think and process everything going on in my life. And every time a thought would come that was useful, I'd write it down in my journal. And I did this for 3 hours. And I was shocked at how many insights, how many things came together because I actually gave myself that thinking time. It was a form of deep meditation. And here's what's crazy. So I've got this watch, it's a Garmin watch, and on it, it tells me what my body battery is. My body battery is essentially my energy. And when my heart rate really lowers and goes down and I'm in more of a deep meditative state, my body battery goes up because I'm actually recovering. I'm in a deep state of meditative recovery. And while I lay there for those 3 hours, I went from, so it's on a scale from 0 to 100, but I went from 50 to 90 on my body battery over these 3 hours of just deep meditating, and my heart rate dropped lower than it's ever dropped in a very healthy way. And I'm telling you, my ideas, my insights, what's amazing was when you give yourself time to think and meditate without interruptions, my phone was on airplane mode, I was able to really work out a lot of the things in my life. And I look back on a lot of the things I've been able to accomplish. There's been certain days where I just actually took the morning off from work and I just gave myself the space to think. And journal. You know, journaling is obviously so powerful, but giving yourself the space to think, journal, write, and you've got a few hours just of freedom to really just relax, recover. So think about it. There's an idea that a lot of good ideas happen when you're in the shower. Why is that? When you're in the shower, you're usually relaxed. There's a lot of research that shows that only 16% of ideas come to you when you're hard at work and focused and cranking. Usually, the best ideas happen when you're fully relaxed, fully recovered, you're not stressed out. That's why people go on vacation and stuff like that, or take sabbaticals, and they end up getting all sorts of amazing insights and clarity and creativity, and they feel a lot better about their lives. They're able to make decisions. They're better able to resolve concerns. And so my question for you and my challenge for you is, are you willing to put that block in your schedule? Chances are, if you're like any other normal person, you have to waste at least 1 to 4 hours a day. That could be on social media. It could be just scrolling. It could just be at the end of the day, you're exhausted and you're doing nothing. Chances are there's 3 or 4 hours every day in your life that is kind of burned. just because of exhaustion or because of your distractions or bad habits. Now, I'm not asking you to give yourself 3 hours every single day for that deep meditation. That would probably be too much. Chances are you can squeeze something like that in once a week or every other week or even once a month. And I can promise you that if you gave yourself about 2 to 3 hours once a week or once a month to just think and meditate and be in flow, you could even do it at the end of the day. Chances are the last 3 hours of your day, there's some downtime. Most people, they're consuming because your willpower is often fried at the end of the day, and you don't give yourself the ability to recover. Instead, you just consume junk food, junk media. You're kind of just plugged in and you're not really there. But if instead you turned on meditative music, soft, quiet music, and literally just allowed yourself to recover, you might even fall asleep, and you definitely sleep better. Obviously, there's a lot of research that shows you shouldn't be staring at screens shortly before bed anyways. And so by slowing everything down, you're going to get yourself into a much better space of sleep. But I would also invite you to make time and invest in yourself and schedule that somewhere in the middle of your week. At some point, if you can, in the next month. Take half your day off, and rather than needing to go and doing more and more and more, actually it's by doing less. Give yourself the space, give yourself the time to recover, reflect, rest. And you're going to be shocked at how many insights you're going to get. You're going to be able to solve your problems just by sitting there and thinking, reflecting, and also savoring. There's a lot of research on the subject of savoring, mindfulness, and gratitude. Savoring is the idea of just literally enjoying the moment. Often people have lost the ability to savor because they're so busy thinking about the next thing, or they're so distracted. You can't savor that food you're eating because you're also looking at your phone, so you're not actually in flow. Mindfulness, similar to savoring, is actually being aware of what's going on inside your head, inside your body, inside your life, and also what's on around you. And so by taking the time to meditate and go deep, sometimes you just need a deep meditative session where it's just you just got nothing for a few hours, and you can actually just think things through. Journal for a while, journal what you're dealing with, journaling what you're thinking about, and then just lay. And you can kind of go back and forth. And it doesn't have to be lay. You can sit or you can be standing or whatever. But giving yourself time to just think, rest, reflect, be grateful, and then going back and forth in your journal and coming to some conclusions about things you want to do. I can promise you'll get insights. Just as a quick thought, one of the things that I've been really trying to do in my own life is being a lot more connected with my wife and my kids. And so earlier this week when I had this 3-hour meditation session, I got so many amazing ideas and insights about how I can improve my relationship with my wife. And I wrote them all down, I acted on them immediately. And it's amazing how quick you can make needed adjustments in your life if you gave yourself the space to ultimately get clear. And meditation obviously is found to improve your life. It improves your optimism. Optimistic people live at least, on average 10 years longer than pessimistic people. There's actually findings on that in positive psychology. That's that's the key. That's my recommendation for you. Obviously you want the micro thinking time sessions first thing in the morning. It's also nice at the end of the day to have a micro session where you maybe just take 5-10 minutes to reflect on your day, on what you learned, on what you won, on what you need to do the next day. But give yourself a 2 to 3 hour block sometime once a month or once a week to just think, just reflect, just think on what you're trying to accomplish, just think about who's in your life, just think about what you need to change. Give yourself that time to meditate, reflect, think, savor, be grateful, be mindful, get clear, and then all of a sudden you can start making better and better decisions, because I can promise you there are a lot of things in your life right now that you don't want. There's a lot of things in your life right now that you want to improve and change. And it's by getting clear and giving yourself that space and respecting yourself enough that you can ultimately get clear on what needs to get removed. And then ultimately your life becomes an upward spiral where you can ultimately remove the things that you don't want in your life, the things that don't resonate with your future self. And you can start making powerful decisions here and now that will help you become your future self. One of the things that happened this week for me as well is I was able to end a relationship, end a collaborative business relationship with someone I didn't want to be in anymore. And I believe a big part of that is because I stopped resonating with that person. I was meditating, I was reflecting. It just became clear to me that that relationship didn't make sense anymore. And so we were able to end it very amiably, very kindly. But when you give yourself that space, when you get yourself clear, when you give yourself time to think and get clear and ultimately to make decisions about what you need to do, then you can actually move yourself forward. So Abraham Lincoln said, If you gave him 6 hours to chop down a tree, he would spend the first 5 sharpening the axe. Or as Stephen Covey would say, sharpen the saw. If you're just running on fumes, I can promise you your thinking process is not very good. If you're not taking time to recover, meditate, reflect, journal, get clear. This is the most high frequency, high form of recovery, is deep meditation, deep flow. You're gonna get yourself into such an extreme flow state and peace state. You're gonna feel grateful, you're gonna be mindful, you're gonna savor the moment, you're gonna be clear on what's important to you, you're gonna get clear on what needs to change, and you're just giving yourself that time to just elevate yourself. And then ultimately you can make decisions from that new frame of mind, that new state of being, and you can remove the things in your life that are ultimately keeping you stuck. A lot of people are on the hamster wheel, and also think about it this way. A lot of people, they're really trying to get to retirement so that eventually they can sit on the beach and actually have meditation, have rest, have recovery. When I was laying on my couch staring out the window and just in a deep state of meditation, I was thinking to myself, there are so many people I know that are just go, 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 go. And ultimately they're not happy. They're just chasing happiness. They're pursuing happiness. I love the quote that there is no way to happiness. Happiness is the way. If you're not taking the time to actually get yourself clear, be healed, then it doesn't really matter how much you're gonna go. There's a great quote from Stephen Covey. He says, every step you're taking up the ladder, if it's leaning against the wrong wall, is ultimately taking you further and further from your goal. And so if you're not giving yourself time to think, meditate, and get clear, then it does not matter how many steps you're taking and how fast you're furiously going, you're ultimately going the wrong direction. I love the quote from Ryan Holiday. He said that people, and this isn't an exact quote, but he said people are just so impulsively moving forward, but they don't actually know what they want. They don't even know where they're going. And so I know a lot of people that way, a lot of very ambitious, a lot of high achieving people who are working so hard and they're spinning their wheels so fast, but ultimately they're chasing success, they're chasing happiness, and they're chasing something that's a mirage that they're never gonna actually get, and they're never giving themselves the time to actually connect with themselves and to think, is this what I really want? Or on the other end, there's those people who are working really hard for that one day when they can finally meditate and retire and rest and recover. It's like, if you actually include that in your life, and if you study the lives of any high performer, they actually put meditation, they put recovery and being connected with themselves and flow before anything else, so that then they can actually do their best work. They can work on the right things, they can remove the wrong things, they can be connected with themselves, and they can just be in a pure peace state. So please take advantage of the micro thinking times in the morning so that every day you're actually focused on the right priorities, but give yourself some time for a macro, more deep level meditative thinking time, at least once a week or once a month. And you can also use that to some degree as a planning session. First off, taking the time to reflect on all the great things that have happened, reflecting on your progress that you've made. A lot of research that shows by reflecting on your progress, you'll feel movement. That'll give you motivation and momentum and confidence by actually reflecting on the progress you've made, but also then you can make plans. So if you took this time once a week or once a month, then you could make better and better plans, and you'd be clear on the right things and you could take the right actions. If you're not taking this time, I can promise you you're missing out on insights and ideas that would ultimately benefit your life. Ideas that your subconscious will give you because you're in that higher meditative state and you're resting and recovering. That's, again, good ideas. Only 16% of them are gonna come when you're busy or working. Almost all of them are gonna happen more of that shower meditative state. And if you're giving yourself a 3-hour just deep meditation, the amount of ideas and insights your subconscious is gonna give you is unbelievable, which can improve your life, improve your relationships. You'll get the idea, reach out to that person. Say, send them flowers, or reach out to that possible mentor, reach out to your wife, whatever it is. All of those possible experiences you'll not get because you were too busy focused on spinning your wheels. And missing those is the difference between going one direction in your life and going in another. So please take the time for those deep meditation sessions. Keep your phone on airplane mode, keep it away from you. Just recover, keep your journal nearby because you're gonna start getting lots of creative insights. I'm Dr. Benjamin Hardy. On this page, I think it's over here, you can get the next video that will help you become your best future self. Have an amazing day.